interesting concept to understand, which was we had many people say to us as we were going through this process that if my leader is Jim Smith, and he's my frontline leader, if he gets promoted, wherever Jim goes, I want to go.
Interesting. Because
And
they had the loyalty.
that exactly that to me became the ultimate litmus test for loyalty.
Welcome to the Loyalty by Leadership podcast, where I, Darrell Moon, your host, interview people who have been inspired by leaders, as well as leaders who strive to inspire, where we discuss leadership insights and strategies that add value and create loyalty.
Welcome to Loyalty by Leadership. I'm Darrell Moon, your host, and I'm excited to have Dean Budney with me today. Dean, why don't you do a quick introduction?
Thank you, Darrell. Great to be here. My background has been for the past 20 plus years in learning and development. A long time ago, it used to be called training and development. So that's migrated a little bit to the learning and development moniker. But my focus has always been on the people aspect of business. So how do we focus and make sure that people understand that they're the key element in an organization? How do we help them grow, learn, and then also blend and assimilate into a culture in which they can thrive? So that's been my focus from an L&D perspective since day one. And I still think to this day that the most important element is the people element in business that sometimes gets overlooked. And with that focus there, once people understand that, then they are the most productive, the most effective, but also, based on today's conversation, also the most loyal from a career perspective. And that's the key element in everything that I do and my approach to the business.
Well, and I am excited to have you as my guest today because of your background and because of loyalty. And we're talking about how leaders can build more loyalty. So, Dean, why don't we start off with, do you have a story or two that you can share with our listeners about people who have earned your loyalty? And what did they do to earn your loyalty?
Sure. And I think it's also important to think a little bit about what the definition of loyalty is, right? So in this context, we're talking about loyalty at work, right? And quote, a business in a business construct. In loyalty, a lot like people, is kind of can be a complex definition, right? So as I was thinking about our conversation today, I would say, well, what is loyalty? Well, to me, it's somebody who has earned my trust. And that trust is kind of the key foundational element to loyalty. Loyalty is where you feel comfortable that you have a connection, that you have a certain amount of affinity towards supporting that person, that organization, what have you. People are loyal to brands, people are loyal to companies, people are loyal to individuals. I think in this context, we're talking about, from a leadership perspective, how does that individual leader earn your loyalty? And the foundational element is, to me, it's trust. So I think that's an important thing to kind of identify, because without trust, nothing else really happens. Loyalty doesn't grow. And so the question really becomes, how do you earn someone's trust, or how does someone earn my trust? And a while ago, probably a good 15, 16 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet Stephen M.R. Covey, who is the son of Stephen Covey. And he had written a book called The Speed of Trust. And this concept was that we can earn trust quicker. And if we can do that, that speed of trust gets things done in business faster. So quicker we get to trust, the more effective our relationship is, the better we work together, and therefore we're more effective. We get things done faster. And so from a business perspective, we're always thinking about, well, how do we earn someone's trust? And I thought the concept was interesting because this speaks back to loyalty, which is his whole premise was that we tend to hold trust in when we first meet somebody, when we first have the opportunity to work with whoever that individual is. And we say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to wait to see if this person will earn my trust.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of, it's like this like secret sauce that we just don't want to get rid of, right? So this
Hold on
person,
to it.
you want to hold on to it, right? His thought was, and based on the research that he had done, because he had researched it for decades, was the most effective leaders earned people's trust by giving it first. Instead of holding on to it, they extended trust immediately and took the opposite approach, which is, I am going to give you my trust. I'm going to extend my trust to you immediately. And then I'll anticipate that you will continue to earn that trust, as opposed to the other way around. And what that did is, it accelerated the relationship, but it also built a level of loyalty with those people because it wasn't something that they had experienced before. It's always that 4, 6 months, maybe 12 months that it takes to work with somebody to understand who they are. And then to figure out, can I trust them? Can I give them a project? Will they deliver? If something goes wrong, will they let me know? Things from that perspective. And then that aspect of it really helps in developing and accelerating that relationship. So the speed to trust also equates the speed to loyalty. And for me, when I think about that type of example, I think about my current business partner, Carrie Lane, who you have met. But Carrie and I weren't always business partners. She actually hired me a number of years ago. And she was somebody who lived that concept of extending trust immediately. And to me, that was very different from what I had experienced before. Right? I had always experienced the opposite. I had to earn people's trust. And it's interesting because that dynamic is, well, that I know this person doesn't trust me. So it takes time now. And then you're often unsure, what is it that I have to do? What behaviors do I have to exhibit in order to earn that person's trust? And rarely do we sit down with somebody who we report to and say, so tell me what I need to do in order to earn your trust. You kind of just have to figure it out as you go. And then you have peer relationships. If you're in a leadership position, you have people that report to you. And so Carrie had this unique ability to extend trust immediately. And the thing that I think also was enlightening for me is that the communication, that level of transparency and openness and honesty to share the good, the bad, and sometimes the very ugly about what was going on, what was happening, and things from that perspective, was also something that contributed to that level of loyalty and that level of trust. Because if you can have an open and a candid conversation, then that enables you to say, okay, this is what we're really facing here. This is the challenges that we have. How do we work together? How do we do that? So to me, that was kind of a turning point in my relationship, specifically with her. And it's funny because when you think about loyalty in a leadership position, I also think it's important to think about, well, what's the definition of a leader, right? And so in business, we get leadership by title.
Often, yeah.
Most of the time. Yet there are many people who lead that don't have a, quote, leadership title, right? So I think from a bare bones definition, I think a leader can simply be defined as someone who has followers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have any followers, then you look behind you and no one's following you, that's hard to claim yourself as a leader, right?
So as you think about Carrie, and specifically her extending her trust to you, you mentioned a couple different things. And was it both or was it one or the other? There was the idea of her maybe just trusting you. Does that mean she gave you responsibility and then let you run with it without a lot of micromanagement? Or was it the fact that she was open, honest, shared the ugly, shared the good, shared the bad, became vulnerable where you felt like, wow, she trusts me enough to be totally open and transparent.
It was actually both, Darrell, right? And it was here, these are the challenges that I'd like you to tackle. So she would give me a project or an assignment. You go out, do what you need to do. I trust that you'll make the right decisions, but let me know how I can help. I'm here to serve you, which was also extremely different.
Yeah, that whole servant leadership thing is, I'm here to provide you the resources to make sure you get your job done.
Exactly. She goes, I'm here to provide you, just to, you said, with the resources, the whatever you need. And whenever you run into a problem, a challenge, let me know and we'll solve these problems. We'll solve it together. So I was not used to that either, right? It was always, look, if you have a problem, you figure it out, right? You and only come to me when you have good things to share.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Covey, which reminds me, years and years ago, probably 27 years ago, I was running a hospital. I was opening up a hospital. I was involved in the management team of the healthcare campus that hospital was being opened on. And that particular administrator of the campus was very much into, like you mentioned, leadership and building teams and teaching people about how to manage, that sort of thing, and brought in the Covey training. And I'll never forget learning about that whole concept of servant leadership that Covey would teach in his trainings, and how people, are there to help you reach the mission of your company. They just need you to provide the resources and the trust so they can go do it.
Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I had been a fan of Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for years, long before I met the son, Stephen, and learned about the speed of trust and that aspect of it. But it's interesting.
I happen to have a very good friend of mine is his son, Josh, which is the youngest of Steve's kids.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I can't say that I know his older son, Steve, but very good friends with Josh.
Oh, that's fantastic. And to tie this back into my conversation with Carrie, right? So her role in the organization was the CHRO, right? She was the Chief Human Resources Officer. Mine was to head up learning and development. Our challenge was to work within an organization that had over 70% turnover.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
You're telling me. And
was it retail?
No,
because retail has a lot of turnover.
Yeah, great question. So this is an organization that provided third-party loan underwriting.
Okay.
So mortgages, third-party loan underwriting mortgages. So in essence, if you were doing back then, right? If you were doing a loan with the Bank of America, let's just use them as an example, and then you called up the 800 number, you would think you were talking to Bank of America, but what you were talking to was our underwriting team, and they were helping out in the overflow of mortgages that needed to be underwritten. So our team, the majority of our employees were underwriters, though anybody involved at an administrative process, they were processors and underwriters and things from that perspective. And there was a tremendous amount of turnover. The culture was that of totally polar opposite of being candid, open, and transparent. Totally opposite of extending trust. And so, which obviously leads to a culture that does not recognize the individual, does not recognize performance, holds them accountable to only one thing only, right? Which is the numbers that you have at the end of each week, and therefore at the end of each month, and therefore at the end of each quarter. And so therefore turnover was extremely high. Our task—
70% is a ton.
Darrell, we did some analysis on what the cost of that was. And this was a number of years before this common conversation around what's the cost of turnover, right? But it was 2.5 times the salary.
Oh, wow.
2.5 times.
Compound that on top of the salary and put that at a 70%. That's a lot.
It's huge. And what contributes to that is the thing I think that is what most people miss is that, let's say you have a talented underwriter in this instance, right, who can produce and underwrite 22 loans in a month. Let's just use a number. Well, that person, once they leave because they're not happy with the culture, now you have to train a new person which typically takes, in that instance, about 30 to 60 days to get them up to speed on how we would do business. Then it's another 2 to 3 months, right, where they begin to ramp up. But it's about at that 6 month that they become as productive as the person that they replaced.
A lot of time loss.
So you have that 6 months where they're ramping up. So that loss of productivity is also a cost to the company as well, right? And so that our focus was to really, how do we change that? So we took this idea of servant leadership, of being trustworthy, being us as extending trust, but also how do you do that? And that was through open and honest communication. It was through accountability. It was through setting expectations and then holding people accountable to those expectations. But it started first with just recognizing the individuals, who they are, what talents they brought to the table, things from that perspective. And then the culture shift took about 18 months.
Well,
But within 2 years, we were at 12% turnover.
wow. And that was with the same CEO all that time?
Same CEO, which is very interesting,
Wow,
right?
that's pretty amazing, because often
it-
that culture is hard to change unless the CEO changes.
Exactly. And what we learned was this. We talk about leadership, right? So you have senior leadership, then you have your mid-level management, which are leaders, but you have your frontline leaders.
Yep.
And
I often call them the trust capital group.
That's a great, I wish I knew that term. That is a phenomenal term, because those frontline leaders, touch the most people. When you simply talk about span of control, right? Then many of our frontline leaders had 20 to 30 reports. So we took in an organization that had 1,500 people, those people touched the most people. We thought, if we can change and work with them, right, then what's going to happen is things are going to happen from a business perspective. The culture is going to change because it can't help but not.
Yeah.
And what happens is all boats are going to rise with the tide. And as the tide fills in and culture gets better, people like it, turnover gets reduced. People like coming to work. They're more productive. Numbers go up. Then all of a sudden, quote, we get the attention of the senior team, which is, what's going on over there?
Yeah. So you took that line management group and really heavily focused on turning them into servant leaders.
Exactly.
And that's what had the big impact across the whole company.
Exactly. And
Awesome.
that's when we began to really realize that leadership does it start at the top? Yes, absolutely. Yet, if you're going to make an impact, sometimes it's at that frontline level that's the most impactful. And oftentimes the easiest to change. And the reason I say that is because often those frontline leaders used to be top producers.
Yeah. Yeah. They were the ones who were producing the most.
They were producing. So they were our top underwriters. They were our top processors. And we thought, well, you've been here for 2 or 3 years. Well, might as well put you into a leadership role. Well,
Yeah.
if you
That doesn't
don't give,
necessarily mean they're great leaders.
you got it exactly right. I mean, if you don't give them the right tools and help them learn how to lead, then they flounder. And then they become toxic leaders, because sometimes they're just, hey, I was a top producer, just do it the way I did it. Why can't you do it the way that I did it? And then next thing you know, you have a whole team of people that resents coming to work every day, because people don't leave the company. One of the other thing we found in our exit interviews is they don't leave the organization. They thought the company was really a great company, but they left their supervisor.
Yeah,
That's who they resigned from.
Yep. Yeah. Those are the people that have the most impact.
They do. And so we learned that if we could impact that frontline leader, if we could provide them with the tools, if we could make them a strong servant leader, then that would have the greatest impact. And it held true. It took a number of months to get there, which obviously it's sometimes hard to turn an aircraft carrier on a dime, right? So, but yet the investment in that, the investment in our frontline leaders really proved to have a phenomenal return.
That's a great story. And I like it's so appropriate for the podcast in terms of loyalty by leadership.
Yeah. And what happened is now we created loyalty with the greatest amount of people. So now you had these frontline leaders who had people that, like I said, some of them had 20 to 30 reports. They were like, hey, wherever, and this was also another interesting concept to understand, which was we had many people say to us as we were going through this process that if my leader is Jim Smith, and he's my frontline leader, if he gets promoted, wherever Jim goes, I want to go.
Interesting. Because they had the loyalty.
That exactly. That to me became the ultimate litmus test for loyalty. In business, when you can look at somebody who you work for and say, whether it's here or wherever you go, I want to work with you. To me, that's a litmus test for loyalty. You've earned that person.
And I've heard so often on this podcast, as I have different guests, that often earning that loyalty amongst your team, yeah, servant leadership, but what does that mean? And what I hear over and over and over are these stories of, I knew they cared more about me than they cared about the mission of the company.
Exactly.
I was loyal to them because I was going through a difficult time and they worked with me. And the fact that they were willing to help me get through a personal challenge, I would do anything for them. It's that earn my loyalty by showing me you care more about me personally than you care about my role in the company and how I contribute to the mission of the company.
Yes. And that idea that, as Covey coins it, and you've mentioned, is servant leadership. It says, how does the leader serve the team? That's a dynamic that usually doesn't exist or is sometimes difficult to find. Right?
Well, you mentioned about how hard it is to turn an aircraft carrier on the dime, but it makes me think of the book, It's Your Ship. Have you heard of the book, It's Your Ship?
I have not. I have heard the concept of burn the boats and burn the ships, but not. So tell me.
So real quickly, there's about 100 battleships in the U.S. Navy.
Okay.
And one of the newer ones was performing worst. And they hired one of the youngest admirals that was ever put in charge of a battleship.
Okay.
And he applied a servant leadership approach. And what he did was he met with everybody on the boat and said, look, nobody stays on a battleship for more than 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
So what is your goal after you leave the battleship? Do you want to be a mechanic? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be in management? Tell me what your long-term goal is when you leave the ship, and I will assign you roles on the battleship to prepare you for your next career.
Okay.
He became the best performing battleship in 18 months.
Not surprised.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that he uncovers in that story that I think is so critical is that often the leaders don't know where the best improvements can be made. One day a sailor came in after talking about his goals of being whatever, an engineer when he leaves the boat. He says, Admiral, have you ever heard of stainless steel? No, he says, first of all, how many times do you think we paint this boat every year? Well, probably 10 to 12 times. Every time we go into a port, every time we have an officer come visit us. And he goes, have you ever heard of stainless steel? And the Admiral says, well, yeah. Well, imagine this sailor spending a good part of the month painting gray over the rust streaks that are caused by these non-stainless steel bolts and nuts all over the boat. And the sailor says, hey, Admiral, just replace these bolts with stainless steel and it won't rust. And we don't need to spend all this time painting the boat. So he did. Over time, he replaced every bolt on the ship with stainless steel. And imagine all that manpower now that was diverted into becoming the best performing battleship versus the best looking gray battleship covering up all the rust.
Right. Oh, it's so interesting. Wow.
People closest to the process know how to best improve the process.
No doubt. And again, that's another thing that came out of this focus on frontline leaders, which what happened was, to your point, a lot of suggestions and ideas on how to do things better, more effectively, and things from that perspective started bubbling up because all of a sudden the frontline leader was open to hearing that. And that also created a level of communication that didn't exist before.
Yeah, people want to make the company better. They see the problems. They want to share. But if the
Yes.
manager's like, we don't, this is how we do it. Keep
Mm-hmm.
your mouth shut. We don't want to hear from you. We've been doing this for a long time. Just do
Mm-hmm.
what we. That is not servant leadership.
Right. And then what that does is it quells ingenuity, right?
And yeah.
In innovation. People will think of and will have ideas, and sometimes they're not the best ideas, but just the fact that they could be heard.
Yeah, and feel like they can be heard, and it's okay to say something.
Exactly. And that level of openness and communication was, I think, one of the key things to us turning everything around.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
and you and I both are big fans of Edwards Deming,
mm-hmm.
total quality management, and his fourth step is get the people closer to the process to improve the process.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if I have a plumbing issue, right, I'm going to call a plumber who knows exactly and knows what tools to put his hands on a pipe, right? I'm not going to call the boss. I want to talk to somebody who's closest to the problem, right?
Yeah.
Or closest to the issue. And so it's interesting what happens when you open up that level of communication. To your point, the battleship, I think, is a great example, right? How can you make it more effective, more efficient? Well, listen to the people who run it, right? Who are there each and every day.
And they're the ones wasting their time.
Right. They're wasting their time painting over rust stains or polishing something that doesn't need polishing.
Yep. So, Dean, do any other stories from your personal life, whether it's family or community or organizations, that where someone has earned your loyalty, that you could share another story?
Sure. I thought about this as well because just for fun, I Googled the definition of loyalty, right? And it gave what we would think is normally a definition of loyalty. But then it said there's a couple of different areas that we are loyal, right? Business, financial, institutional, right? Business, but also consumer, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with the Moen Company.
Yeah.
Moen, right?
Yep.
So
Awesome.
the Moen Company makes kitchen, it's mostly faucets and things from that standpoint.
Yep.
They don't make much else. But one of the things that they do make are garbage disposals.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So about a year ago, my garbage disposal decided it was going to stop working for whatever reason. It just didn't turn on. So I looked at it and it had the Moen moniker on there.
Right.
I didn't know that I had bought a Moen. When I bought the unit, I put a new one in. It had been 4 years that unit had been in there. I did not know that. I didn't know it until I actually called the organization. So this is how it started. I pick up the phone, I call the 800 number that was on the unit itself. Someone picked up on the very first ring and said, "Hello, Moen customer service, how can I help you?" And I was waiting for a hit number 1 for this, hit number 2 for that, hit number 3. And I was like, "Hello?" She goes, "Hi."
I'm a real person.
I'm a real person. It's exactly what she said. She goes, "I am a real person." I said, "Oh, okay." So I gave her my story. She goes, "Hold on 1 second." She said, can you see the serial number of the unit? I was like, "Yep." So I gave it to her. She goes, "Yes, you purchased this unit about 4 years and 4 months ago." She goes, "We have a 5-year warranty on the unit." And so she goes, so therefore it's under warranty and we would be happy to replace the unit for you. And I thought, wow, okay. Yeah. I was impressed with that. It gets better. So she said, okay, so this is what we're going to do. She said, I'm going to ship you a new unit to that address. She goes, give me just a second. She goes, let me find if we have a certified installer in your area. So as I mentioned to you, I live full-time in Cocoa Beach, Florida. It's a very tiny, small beach town on the east coast of Florida, about an hour directly east of Orlando. She comes back on after about 30 seconds. She goes, I am so sorry. She goes, but we do not have a certified installer in the Cocoa Beach area, which I'm not surprised.
Small beach town,
It's a
right?
small little beach town. She goes, so what we're going to do is I'm going to send you a $150 check so that when you hire an installer, you can pay them with that.
Wow. I
And I
mean,
was
it's
like,
one thing to be a warranty on the device, but it's another thing to be willing to make the replacement.
I was quiet for a second, and I go, "Are you kidding?" She goes, "Oh no." She said, "That's our policy." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So
Did
I
that
said, "All
create
right,
immediate loyalty to Moen?
without a doubt." So
Yeah.
it's so funny you said that, right? So I was like, "All right, thank you so much." She said she sent me she goes, "You'll get an email confirmation from me. You'll also she confirmed my address. She goes, "You'll get a check from us within the next 5 to 7 days," and things from that perspective. And she said also the unit that you have, when the installer comes, give them the unit and then they'll get a credit when they send the unit back to us. So the non-certified installer is going to get a credit for sending it back. I get to pay them from the $150 that they gave me. It
They
only
keep the
cost
difference if it costs less.
right. It was $143 was the
Oh,
total.
wow.
Interestingly enough, so I get to
Interesting that
keep
they knew that.
I
Yeah.
get to keep $7. But the thing is, all right. So fast forward. This was, I take it back, 2 years ago. 6 months ago, I don't know what it is about me and my other property, the garbage disposal decided to stop working. So who do you think I purchased from?
Moen.
And I cannot tell you how many people I have told this story to.
Yeah, because you do. You love to tell a good story.
But not only that, it's something as innocuous as a garbage disposal.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about innocuous.
Right. It's not something that you think about. It's not something that pops up in, dinner conversation. Like, hey, what kind of garbage disposal do you have? That doesn't happen.
Never.
But we all seem to have one, right? And so for me, Moen, with just those few examples of putting the customer first, right? What's important to the customer? And they've earned my business for life. I will never buy another garbage disposal. And at the point in time where I remodel our kitchen, I will be buying a Moen product. I'll be buying a Moen sink. I'll be buying a Moen, anything that they have, I'm going to buy. And because if that's the level of service, but not only that, it's the commitment to the quality of their product. And to me, that means that someone in the Moen organization at some point said, this is how we're going to treat our customers. And I believe that's the leadership, right? Someone said, look, this is going to be our customer service policy. If one of our products is under warranty, we will have a certified installer install it for free. And if they're not, we will pay the customer so they can they can get their product installed. And so that to me ties back to loyalty and leadership, because that means that organization lives that value.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to, we talked about Deming. I mean, how did Deming become so popular? Well, he came up with the 4 simple principles of identify your customer, figure out what's going to delight them most, measure the processes that go into delighting them, and then improve the process when you find variance. So GM didn't want to talk to him. Ford didn't want to talk to him, but he went to Japan And Japan figured out that what people want the most in buying an automobile is one that lasted.
Exactly.
And Toyota and Honda still to today enjoy the reputation of cars that last.
No doubt.
And
Yep.
it's an incredible story of how loyalty can be built on just finding out what the customer wants.
And giving them a product that they can be proud of, but also be happy to own. And so when you talk about a car, and we are a family that has a Honda Accord, so it's mentioned. Now, this Honda Accord is a 2007. It has 173,000 miles on it, and it'll probably, according to the mechanic, go for another 100. So to your point, right? How many cars out there can go 250,000 miles?
Well, and that's why people buy Toyotas and Hondas.
Yes, exactly. It's my daughter's car. She loves it. And she said every once in a while she gets the oil changed when she remembers,
Tires have to be replaced.
right? And
It
then,
has to be replaced.
right? It's
Washer fluid has to be replaced.
right. But the car itself, it's there are certain things in life that I think we always want to have a product that's worry-free.
Yep.
And
cars are one of those. Yeah.
And those cars are one of those. And it's, again, to your point, it's embracing those principles, the Deming principles of what's most important to the customer. What are they willing to what product are they willing to part their money for and with, right? And I think it's interesting because when you talk about customer service, I think it's so important to not miss the fact that, I don't know if you're a fan of Sir Richard Branson.
Oh, yeah.
So I love his quote, and it's the thing he built Virgin on, which is, yes, the customers are important, but who's the most important person is the employee.
Yeah.
And how we treat
brands Costco is another one.
Yeah.
They recognize their own employees as the primary customer.
They're the primary customer because they're the ones that actually serve the customer.
Yep.
And if they're happy and productive and feel rewarded and recognized for the work that they do, they go above and beyond for the customer. And then that's what the customer experiences. They don't experience sour faces or people who say, hey, I don't know where that is. It's over there in aisle 4.
Sorry. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's such an important thing to kind of keep in mind, because we're talking about loyalty, right? We're talking about how do our employees remain loyalty? How do we create that for them? And it's that culture. It's that sense that they are recognized and they're rewarded. And when you look at and do any type of research on the why people leave one organization or they leave their job, well, we already talked about they don't quit the company typically, they quit their supervisor. But the other thing that happens is if they don't, the reason that they often leave, the number one reason, it's not money. That's always number 4, number 5. It's a lack of recognition.
Yeah. Feeling valued.
Feeling that the work that they do has a downstream positive effect somewhere, somehow. And then the next key point is understanding what that is. There's so many people that they work and they don't really understand what the end result is of what they do. And that's another thing that we worked on when I was working with Carrie, was making sure that those frontline people knew what the impact of what they were doing.
Yeah. And how it contributed to the overall mission. A lot of people are mission driven today, but needing to know how they contribute to the mission is critical.
Absolutely.
I would love for you to take a minute to just share with our listeners what you do, what your company does, and then how to reach you.
Sure, be happy to. So what we do at Carrie Lane Executive Solutions is a lot centered around what we've been talking about, is how do you identify where you can focus on people? What are your people challenges? But also where in the organization, are people the most important element in the equation? And then what can you do in order to impact that? What tools, resources, learnings, development, things from that perspective? How do we make sure that they understand that they are a critical element in the organization? And then what type of frameworks can we build around to support them? And that's what we do. We help people, organizations identify what we can do to help people be most effective, most efficient. And if you think about if I'm a company and the fourth S is solvency in the Deming process, right? Which is, okay, we have to make money in this process, right? So in order to keep going and doing the things that we're doing, being a going concern is extremely important. So if people can be in a role that speaks to what they do well, typically there's two results. When they're in the right job, they are typically good at what they do and they're happy doing it. And then they thrive and want to learn and grow and develop. And that's the most effective employee for the organization. And that's really what we focus our practice on. How do we help people identify their most effective and efficient role within the organization? And so for us, you can reach us. I'm at Dean at Kerry Lane. It's KERILAINE.com. We are online at KLES. You can see my shirt here. KLES.pro is our website. And be happy to talk to anyone that feels that they're having a gap or an issue with regards to their what we call human capital. How do we help make human capital the most effective and efficient process in the organization?
Awesome. Dean, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. It's been fun to have you. And perhaps we can do this sometime again in the future.
I would love to do that. Darrell, thank you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes.